So now we are on the final chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and this will be the final video of this series. So far in this chapter, Krishna has covered the different kind of renunciation, right? And now he goes further on. He says, the knowledge, the process of knowing, and the knower are the threefold impulse to the action. The instrument, the action, and the doer are the threefold basis to the action, right? So basically he's saying the knowledge is the impulse to the action. The knowledge is the cause for the action, right? So basically it is the knowledge that eventually becomes the action, right? So if, for example, if you are listening this very attentively, the chances are maybe at some point, if the conditions are right, that knowledge will become an action, right? So that cause will become an effect. So in that sense, action is basically knowledge, but in the subtler form. Now he is saying, it is declared in the Sankhya that knowledge, action, and the doer are of three kinds, right? So knowledge, action, and doer are also of three kinds, based on three qualities. And he says, the knowledge by which one sees one imperishable being in all being, undivided in separate being, know that knowledge to be sattvic, right? So basically he is saying, the knowledge which let you see, there is only one experiencer behind all the experiences, is the knowledge which is sattvic in the nature, right? And why is it sattvic? Because if we see, not understand, but if we see that all the experiences are being experienced by only one entity, and that entity is ourself, then there is no sense of division, and then there is no ill will, hatred. I mean, how can you get angry or get have ill will against yourself, right? If you see that the other person, the person in front of you, is also just your own self, currently because of the ignorance we cannot see it, but if we can see this, right, if we can at least intellectually even understand it, and if we see this for a while, and with the assumption that okay, there is only one experiencer who is experiencing all the things, then there is actually no problems, right? And then there is no need for cultivating compassion, loving kindness, or anything like that, because by nature, if you see somebody as your own part, there is a natural compassion, right? How can you see yourself suffering, right? How can you see, when you know the other person and you are the same entity, and the way you feel, the way other person is feeling is the same, is you yourself feeling the same thing, then you naturally feel very compassionate about everybody, right? Then you cannot see other person being suffering, and you feel joy in the other person's joy, because you know that you are the one who is enjoying the same thing. So that knowledge is sattvic in the nature, right? That knowledge is pure in the nature. But that knowledge which sees in all beings separate entities of various kind, by differentiation, that knowledge is to be rasic knowledge, right? So here he is saying, when we see different entities in different people, or different animals, or different things, then our actions are very different, right? Then our attempts or efforts are mostly around, how can we grow ourselves, right? How can I be bigger or better, or how can I win the competition? We compete with each other. We have all these different. The point of view itself is very different. I am separate from other people. I am separate from everything else. So now I have to, take care of myself, right? Even if that means other person is being hurt, or that means other person is being, even getting killed or anything, I do not care. I do not care about other person's suffering. I do not care about other persons at all. I do not see other person's problems at all, right? Because I am consumed in myself. So that kind of point of view automatically generates ambitions, automatically generates, self-centric behavior, self-seeking, and that sort of mind, right? From that point of view, from that kind of knowledge, that kind of action generates, right? So that's those are the things which he referred as a rajasic action, right? And then we suffer because of that knowledge, and we also create suffering around us. And the knowledge, however, which is attached to one single action as if it was everything, and without reason, without real purpose, and small in significance, is called to be tamasic, right? So a knowledge where somebody is getting really attached to just one aspect of nature, or just like some small and less significant aspect of the nature. Maybe you can say I could be attached to something non-harming, even something like, I want to learn a language, for example, right? And I get totally attached and immersed into it. Only this is what is important to me. This is what matters to me. But in the larger scheme, it is significant. It is not very significant, uh, and doesn't have any substance. So getting attached to that one single kind of action and that kind of a knowledge is referred here as a tamasic knowledge. Then he talks about the action which is, so action he has already talked a lot about before as well, right? The action which is free from the fruits of desires and the action which is free from the attachment. This kind of action is a sattvic in the nature. He says the same thing again, that action which is ordained, that action which is one's duty and free from the attachment, performed without desire or hate, with no wish to obtain any fruit, is said to be sattvic in the action. But the action which is performed with the wish to obtain desire, with selfishness or gain, with a lot of effort, is declared to be rasic in the nature, right? That action which is undertaken because of the delusion, disregarding of the future bondages, injury to oneself and other, that action is referred as a tamasic action, right? So we have already discussed these kind of actions and sattvic action in the nature, rasic action in the nature, and tamasic action in the nature. Now he's talking about the doer in the sense of our personalities, right? So he's talking about what kind of personality is sattvic, what kind of personality is rasic, and what kind of personality is tamasic, right? So he's saying release from the attachment, free from the ego, with the enthusiasm and resolution, similar in the success and failure, such doer is sattvic, right? So the personality, the doer who is acting, he's saying the person who is free from the ego and attachment, so he doesn't care about he doesn't own the action, he's doing the action as a kind of offering to the higher self or in a different way, and he's released from the attachment. He's not very attached to this action, and he's very enthusiastic and very resolved about his action, right? So whatever he's doing with the strong resolution and firmness. At the same time, he is very enthusiastic in his action, and he's similar into success and failure. If he's not attached to desire or fruit, then he's anyhow similar to the success and failure. Such doer is said to be sattvic in the nature. Okay. On the other hand, the other person is working as very passionate, desiring the fruit of the action, greedy, violent in nature, impure, subject to joy and sorrow. Such doer is proclaimed to be rasic in the nature. So he's saying somebody who is very passionately following something, very desiring the fruit of the action, of the success, very greedy, very violent in nature, impure, subject to joy and sorrow. Such doer is proclaimed to be rasic in the nature. Now here it may seems like the rasic person might be very successful as compared to sattvic person, right? Sattvic person is not very attached, is not really looking for a strong success and failure. Here the guy who is very attached to, okay, I want to achieve this goal, and very passionate, going through all the pain and pleasure, and going very greedy, violent, willing to smother through the people, willing to do anything for that success, seems to be going to be more successful, right? Actually, that is not the true, because what is going to happen here is the rasic person is definitely going to suffer, right? Because of this attachment to the action, he's going to suffer through the whole process. But the success or not success is not the cause for that is the amount of effort, right? And I believe the sattvic person is going to be able to put a lot more effort as compared to the rasic person, because his mind is stable. His mind is not pulling him in a different direction. So he will be serene and peaceful. At the same time, he will probably achieve much more than a rasic person in terms of success or the worldly success. On the other hand, rasic person is going to create a lot of suffering for himself or from other person, and definitely with so much grit and willpower, he can achieve many things. But then the problem is, then he will have this sense of fear of losing them, or that he will have desire for even bigger objects, right? So in that way, he just keeps cycling this thing. And here the inner life is much more important as compared to external success, right? So in that sense, the sattvic person is always going to be more joyful, going to achieve much more, and going to be just a pleasant experience internally, right? On the other hand, the rasic person is going to suffer. undisciplined, vulgar, wicked, deceitful, lazy, despondent, procrastinating, such as the doer, said to be tamasic in the nature, right? That this kind of a person is not actually doing anything. He is, he's just lazy and procrastinating, undisciplined, playing this politics and all these kind of stuff, deceitful, wicked. So this kind of person is a tamasic in the nature. Now he's talking about the intellect and determination, right? So he's saying let's talk about the intellect and determination and their differentiation, right? Their segment, their categories. So he says the intellect which knows when to act, when not to act, what to do, what to be done and what not to be done, and what is to be feared and what not to be feared, along with knowledge of liberation and the bondage, Arjuna, is sattvic, right? So that intellect which knows when to act and when not to act, right? When you are out of balance and when you are in the balance, right? So he knows like what is going to create more disturbance around himself or inside himself, and he knows what is going to create more harmony around himself and within himself. So he has this understanding of what action is like going to create what kind of effects, right? And when one should be acting and when one should be not acting, and what should be feared and what should not be feared, these kind of things, as well as the liberation and the bondage. What kind of action creates more bondage, what kind of action creates more liberation. And so this kind of an intellect is referred as a sattvic intellect. That intellect which distinguish incorrectly between right and wrong, so it is able to see through but not really very clearly. So he's saying that intellect which distinguish incorrectly between right and wrong, between that which is to be done and which is not to be done, is rasic in the nature, right? So some things are being done which is right, something he is not able to discriminate very properly, when and what. So this kind of action is this kind of intellect is going to be rasic in the nature. Now that intellect which is deluded by the darkness, imagines wrong to be the right and all things to be perverted, is tamasic in the nature. So this kind of intellect is more like doing everything which supposed to be not which you should not be doing, at the same time not doing the things which you should be doing, right? So enveloped in the darkness, imagines wrong to be the right and right to be the wrong, and all things to be perverted. Now he's talking about the firmness or determination. So that unswearing firmness, by which through yoga one holds fast the functions of the mind, breath and senses, that firmness, Arjuna, is sattvic in the nature, right? So he's saying the firmness by which one control his mind, not even control, like one which train maybe. So the firmness or the determination with which one conquer himself, in a sense, right? The firmness with which one through yoga holds fast the functions of the mind, breath and senses, right? The self-control, in the sense, self-restraint. That kind of a firmness is referred here as a sattvic firmness. But the firmness by which one holds on duty, pleasure and wealth, dharam, kam and arth. So the duty, one's own duty, you can say, or more dharma of one's own dharma, and the pleasure and the wealth with attachment and desire for the fruit of the action, right? So we can have a very strong determination of an object that I want to achieve, and that kind of a firmness is referred here as a rasic firmness. And the firmness by which one holds his duty or pleasure or wealth, right? With attachment and desire, and with the attachment and the desire for the fruit of the action, that firmness is rasic in the nature. And the firmness which by which a man does not abandon the sleep, fear, grief, depression and conceit, is a tamasic in the nature, right? So the firmness which is the kind of a pull that these things have, these sleep, grief, depression, fear. So the firmness that holds person in these states, that firmness is referred here as a tamasic in the nature. Now the Krishna is defining threefold happiness that one enjoys through the practice, by which one comes to the end of the suffering as well, right? So he's now categorizing the different kind of happiness. That which in the beginning is like a poison, but in the end becomes nectar. That happiness born from the tranquility of one's own mind is declared to be sattvic, right? So he's saying more in terms of the practice of yoga or practice of self mastery, or even something like exercising, these things may not feel very good in the beginning, but their effect is ultimately very brings the happiness, right? And that kind of happiness is referred here as a sattvic in the nature. A lot of the practice of meditation, practice of yoga, all these kind of things which could be very challenging in the beginning, and while we are doing it might look like we are having hard time, but their results are going to bring up their results bring wonderful, so their results are wonderful, and that kind of happiness he's referring here is a sattvic in the nature. That which is in the beginning through the contact of the senses and their object is like nectar, and the feel like nectar, and in the end feels like poison, that happiness is declared to be rasic in the nature. An example could be something like obese, right? So the taste of the food feels good, so we keep eating junk food, but in the end the result of that action will become very poisonous in the end, right? The loss of the health and all these things. That happiness which is both in the beginning and the afterward just dilutes the self, arising from the sleepiness, negligence, is declared to be the tamasic in the nature. So this kind of a procrastination, sleepiness, negligence, indulgence, these kind of happiness, right? There is a happiness in this dullness and sleepiness. So these kind of happiness he is referring here as a tamasic in the nature, right? So these kind of happiness, there is actually no happiness from the beginning to the end, and it's just the delusion of the happiness, right? Okay. So now he is defining the different duties of the different kind of people based on their gunas, right? So he talks about a person should be performing his duty without any attachment. So he's defining this duty here, and this is basically based on what our caste system in India was built upon. So he's saying based on three qualities of the nature, sattva, tamas and rajas, there was three different kind of nature of people, right? And this nature can continues to change as we go through different phases of our life. So he's saying the duties of the Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Sudras, Arjuna, are distributed according to the quality arises on their own nature, right? So first he goes on and define what is the duties of Brahman, right? So tranquility, restraint, austerity, purity, forgiveness, uprightness, knowledge, wisdom and faith in God are the duties of the Brahman, right? So it's more like somebody who is more like a profile of a professor here. The tranquility, restraints, austerity, so he's working on the self-mastery in a sense. Purity, forgiveness and uprightness, so he's more like a moral person. The knowledge, wisdom and faith in God is like he's looking for the self-realization and things like these. Is this kind of these are the duties of the Brahman born in their innate nature. Heroism, firmness, skill, not fleeting in the battle, generosity, lordly spirit are the duties of the Kshatriya, right? Born in their innate nature. So these are the more of like kind of a people who have a rajas element but also kind of a sattvic in a nature. So they are more like active, they want to do something but not for self-seeking point of view, right? They want to do from the point of view of service, right? So these are the people who have heroism, firmness, skill, not fleeting in a battle, generosity, lordly spirit, more like a warriors, right? So this is like a warrior caste. This is the warrior caste, and this is their innate nature. Then he's saying cow herding, trades, these are the duty of the Vaishya. So these are more like a business people, born of their innate nature. Service is the duty of the Sudras, born in their innate nature. So the other caste is the Sudra, which is working for other people, right? So devoted to his own nature, a man attain perfection. So he's saying each of these categories, it's not like one thing is better than other. The person who is devoted to his own nature, and in the ancient India, these things were very clearly defined, who's supposed to be doing what, right? Now it is not the similar, so it may not be applied like word to word like that. But he's saying whatever is one's duty, the one can perform his own duty properly and then attain the supreme self or the self-realization at the same time, and can attain the perfection, right? By worshipping with his own proper duty. So he's saying again, like your duty should be done as an offering to the self. Your duty should be done as an offering to the God, or in the sense of deeper self, right? So by worshipping with his own proper duty, him from whom all beings have their origin. To the offering is to the whom from, it's like a source of everything. Him whom by whom the universe is pervaded, man finds the perfection, right? So you can be in the any of these categories, or you can see whatever is your duty according to your gunas, and you can do that duty to the perfection as offering to the source of yourself, as offering to the God, right? And he's saying it's better to do one's own duty, even though it is imperfect, than the duty of another one well performed, because performing one's own duty prescribed by one's own nature does not incur evil. Again, he's using this word evil in terms of using mental disturbance, right? When you are acting according to your own nature, then your mind is not disturbed, right? On the other hand, when you are acting because you have seen somebody doing something else and now you want to do the same thing, in that case, because you are not acting based on your nature, there is going to be some internal conflict, right? And that internal conflict here is referred as a sin, evil, right? So one does not incur any evil. One should not abandon the duty to which one is born, even though he is deficient in that. Indeed, all undertaking are enveloped by the evil, as fire is by the smoke. So he's saying by every action is going to bring some degree of mental discomfort or some degree of internal conflict, right? So he's saying every action by nature is like that. So even if you are doing your action based on your own nature, you are still going to have some degree of mental disturbance and conflict, which is okay, because that is the nature of the action itself. Okay. Now he's talking about so now he's giving kind of a final teaching. He's saying with the intellect, so he's kind of summarizing everything that he has talked so far. So he's saying with his intellect unattached to all the objects, with the conquered self free from desire, by renunciation one attains the supreme state of freedom from the action, right? So he's saying how do you get free from the action? First, you are unattached. You have to get to the point of understanding where like this attachment is causing you some harm, and you are being more and more unattached to all the items. And then with the conquered self free from the desire, by renunciation, and one attains the supreme state of freedom from the action. In that state you are still acting, but you are free from the disturbance that action creates, or the cycle and the bondage that action creates, right? Then he says, endowed with the pure intellect, controlling the self with the firmness, abandoning sounds and the other object of the senses, casting off the attraction and the hatred, dwelling in the solitude, eating lightly, controlling speech, body and mind, constantly devoted to the yoga of meditation, taking refuge in the dispassion, right? So now basically he's going inside. So first he says, okay, first get your action in the order, right? If you do the action certain way, those actions are not going to create any more disturbance inside the mind. Then he says then he goes into the level of mind, and he talks about endowed with the pure intellect, right? So the intellect which is not attached to so many different external objects, is controlling the self with the firmness. So all the internal chaos that is internal disturbance or internal conditioning that has happened, so he is working with that, controlling the self with the firmness. These impulses that we have, these biological impulses that we have, so he's controlling the self with the firmness, abandoning the other sound and other object of the senses. So he's letting go of the other object of the sound and senses, like sound and different senses, and casting off the attraction and the hatred, right? So now he's working inside his self, right? He's working internally. Now he's going towards even more deeper meditation. So he's saying dwelling in solitude, eating lightly, controlling speech, body and mind, constantly devoting to the yoga of meditation, and taking refuge in the dispassion. Then he says relinquishment of the egotism, force, arrogance, desire, anger, possession of property, unselfish, tranquil, he is fit for the oneness with the Brahman, right? So it's more like a fruit of the meditation. Relinquishment of the egotism, force, arrogance, desire, anger, and possession of the properties. Unselfish and tranquil, he is fit for the oneness with the Brahman. Absorbed in the Brahman, he whose self is serene, does not mourn, and he does not desire. Impartial among all being, he attains the supreme devotion to me, right? So he started from the action. Once the action is done, then he goes further and says, okay, after the action, work on the intellect. Once your intellect is stable and the self is conquered, he went into the more meditative state, and once he get established in the meditation, then he says ultimately he gets the fruit of the meditation, which is unselfish, tranquil, and being able to fit to be one with the Brahman and absorbed in the Brahman. And now he goes forward as the fruit of these practices. Absorbed in Brahman, he whose self is serene does not mourn nor does he desire. Impartial among all being, he attains the supreme devotion to me. Right? Once he realizes, he get to the point of devotion. He becomes naturally unattached to everything and indifferent to everything, and kind of he sees everything as the same, and he attains the supreme devotion to me. By devotion to me, he comes to know that who I am in truth. Right? By constantly devoting to me, he knows that what I am in truth, and then having known me in truth, he enters into me immediately. Right? Performing all action, he who's realized always on me attains by my grace eternal imperishable abode. So again, the action, then he goes to the intellect, then he start meditating, and once he start to get the sense of who exactly he is, he start to get devoted to that, and with that devotion he start to get clear sense of realization what exactly is the God or the supreme being, and on the self-pervading on what exactly he is, and from there the whole journey kind of ends. And then he talks then there's a one final verse. Okay. Okay, so then he says, he has talked about all these things, and he says that you should think about these things, whatever I have talked, you should think about these things, and then you should do whatever pleases to you. Right? He Krishna at this point has is kind of has given the whole discourse, and now he's no more persuading Arjuna. He's pretty much he's telling Arjuna, like, whatever I have said, think about these things. Right? Just contemplate these things, go deeper into them, see if what I'm saying is the truth, and once you come to the conclusion, then do whatever feels right to you. At the same time, if filled with egotism you think I shall not fight, your resolve will be in the vain, your own material nature will control you. Right? So you don't have an action. You see, Arjuna can decide at this point, like, okay, still I don't want to fight. So Krishna is saying it is not up to you actually. Right? You still will have to fight. Just because you decided you are not going to fight doesn't mean this battle will not happen. In fact, your material nature will make you fight in that way. They compel you to fight. So what you wish not to do through delusion, you shall do that against your will, Arjuna, bound by your own karma, born out of your own material nature. Right? So what is going to be happen is going to be happen. Right? And you still will be acting based on your nature. Here he is giving the choice to Arjuna, like, you can offer your nature, you can think about, you can understand the nature of reality, you can think about it, and you can offer your nature, you can offer your action to me. In that way you can be free of the fruit of that action. Right? So yeah, it's beautifully ending this Bhagavad Gita. It's saying, right, whether you want it or not, you are still going to end up fighting. At the same time, what I'm saying, just think about it, contemplate about it, and then do whatever you feel right.